Everybody's welcome. So welcome, Sue, to you.
Well, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here with you.
Yeah, it's great. So you were an intuitive and had a sense of spirits, of what people would call otherworldly things from early on. Why don't you talk a little about that?
Well, I grew up in New Orleans. My mother is French Cajun, and she came from a long line of women with the sense, they called it, who would wake up in the night knowing that someone had died before the phone call came announcing it. And yet it wasn't something they were especially proud of. So I was given the message early on, you know, that's nice that you have dreams that come true, but you better be quiet about that or it can just get you in trouble. Nevertheless, as a kid, you know, I'd come to the breakfast table and explain a dream that I had had about a car accident, very detailed and specific, the color of the truck, the road we were on. And my family would sort of laugh, but you know, my father would ask me things like, you saw the color of the truck? And I'd say, oh yeah, it was green. And my dad would say, well, I thought we couldn't dream in color. And he really wanted to understand it all. And then the next day, we'd all forgotten about it, and we'd be driving on that exact road, and a green truck, exactly like I had described, would be in front of us, and it would stop suddenly, and I'd be in the back seat screaming, stop, it's my dream, don't hit it. And so we would not crash into it, but we'd come up against it. And my family started to pay attention and go, all right, well, she's got some unusual things going on, but still it was the 50s. And so the message was, that stuff is interesting, but it can probably get you in trouble, so be quiet about it.
Were you of the religious background
Catholic.
where that was almost the work of the devil?
Well, you know, the Catholics are a little bit more open about that because they do sort of embrace things more than the heaven and hell Christian, very strict Christian path. So they didn't tell me it was from the devil, but they certainly made it clear that it wasn't going to serve me in life to honor that gift. And my father was a wonderful, generous, warm man, but he was an engineer, a left-brain linear thinker. And he would take me to the library and say, you know, let's go look up some books on this stuff and see if we can learn about it. And I loved it that he did that. And we'd go and look through the library and try to find books on the supernatural. And back in the 50s, there was almost nothing, you know, but we would sit down and try to read about it. And he knew that I was sort of troubled by things that I would dream about, and I'd wake up in the night upset, and he would walk me around the house and calm me down. And for me, it was a journey of learning how to use this gift and be able to connect with the other realms and see things without being afraid of them. And that took me a long time. It took me many, many years.
Why don't you talk a little about that process, because there are probably a lot of kids who are...
In fact, I think everyone comes in intuitive. You know, we're all, as children, we're all very in touch with those other realms. And some of us are, like me, a little bit less able to shut it out than others. But the thing I help people with now is realizing that initial impression that you get of someone standing next to you, or of a voice giving you guidance, or of a dream that you have that seems very important, that's always right, and it's always helpful, and you don't get that information unless it's being given to you on purpose to help you and to help you help other people. And that was the piece that took me a long time to understand, that if I woke up in the night with a spirit standing next to the bed in complete full apparition, that he wasn't there to hurt me. He was there to give me some information that I could use actually to help other people with. And I've learned since that spirits were coming to me to give me a message to pass to someone who was grieving their death. And even though now, Alan, to be honest, I still wake up screaming, I quickly learn to calm myself down and listen and ask questions rather than be afraid, and then pass that knowledge on to my clients the next day. And I help a lot of grieving people because their loved ones show up the night before in my dreams and in my bedroom, and they pass on messages. And I've gotten more used to it, but it took me a long time.
And these, do you see the actual apparitions of the relatives, or an angel? Or
I'll give you an example. it's just been consistently in my life since I was a child. I must have a sign on my head that says, I'm open for business if you're in the other realms and you have a message. About a year ago, I had a client, or a few years ago, I had a client the next morning from New Orleans who I'd never met. And when I work with clients, I take their name and their date of birth, and that's all I know. And then I meditate on that, and I work with their path from numerology and meditate on it and ask for guidance. And then I went to sleep that night, and in the middle of the night, I became aware that there was a man standing next to the bed, and I can still see him. He was so completely clear. He was wearing blue jeans and a plaid shirt, and had a big belly and a gray hair and a little beard, and he was very sweet. You could feel his energy, very sweet, and not trying to hurt me or scare me. But he was so vivid that, Alan, he was right next to the bed. And when that happens at 2 in the morning, you're, right. And I sat up and turned on the light. And as I turned on the light, he slowly, almost cell by cell, evaporated. And I had by that time woken up my husband, Gene, and the kids and the dog and the cat and everything. And they were all like, go back to sleep, it's just Mom, And I was walking around the house, checking closets, because I couldn't believe that intense vision wasn't physical. I thought,
even after all
that, that one was so real that I just thought there has to be a person in the house. That was so real. I can still see him. I could feel his presence. And so finally, I sat in meditation. I really connected with what that was about, and I realized, it was a beautiful, loving spirit with a message for someone, but I don't know who. And the next morning, I picked up the phone to call my first client, and was working with her and talking to her, and she started telling me her story, and all of a sudden, it all made complete sense. And he was her departed lover, and I described him to her, and she started crying because she had given up her faith in God, because she had made an agreement with her partner that if there was another realm, that when he departed, he would come back and communicate with her. And he was trying, but he couldn't get through to her. She wouldn't believe it. She wouldn't trust it. So he came through me the night before so that I could perfectly describe him. And it took a lot of energy for him to push that much into the physical world. And I could perfectly see him and then perfectly describe him to her. And she had a complete spiritual awakening and becoming at peace with the fact that death was not an ending, that it was just a continuation of our soul's journey. And the reason that was so important for her was her daughter had died when her daughter was 2 from leukemia. And it had really closed her heart and really caused her a lot of spiritual existential crisis. Why would a beautiful child suffer and die? And I know that pain, and I'm sure you know that pain that everyone goes through. And yet, to know that her partner was there on the other side telling her all is okay was her gift to understand that it was a continuation of spirit on the other side.
Wow. So, you do a lot of that kind of counseling and coaching in terms of information for people.
Right.
Is it always about loved ones passing, or is it about how to be in life?
The funny thing is that the focus of my work is career, because in this planet at this time we spend 85% of our waking hours at a job, and that's just the game that we're all playing right now at this stage of our consciousness evolution. And we have a lot of myths and kind of crazy thinking ideas about how we have to do that and how it doesn't have to be our true soul's purpose, and we just need to get the benefits and the paycheck. And you and I both know that's not true, that the real game here is to wake up and realize that, yes, every moment here has to be our true soul's purpose, and that we need to be making our living from doing our true soul's mission. And so that's the focus of my work. And yet, a person, in order to honor that and have the courage to manifest it, has to be spiritually awakened and enough to understand that the unseen world is more real than the seen world. And when we have death and loss and pain and all the things we experience on this dense realm, it can shut us down to our spiritual self. And so if the piece that's blocking us from opening up is grief, or pain from a departed loved one. That seems to be a particular gift that I have of bringing that knowledge in to help a person heal that, so that they can then focus on getting their work done and fulfilling their mission and not being stuck in their grief and their pain. And that also comes to me, Alan, because my husband died when I was 29, died from cancer, and then my best girlfriend died the next year, and my father, and I've been through many grief and loss experiences myself, and I got stuck in my grief and my pain for a long time and had that existential, what is the purpose if everyone is going to suffer and die?
And this was, you got stuck in this even though you'd been receiving all this information and all this channeling, in a sense, and connection with the other realms.
Yeah.
So it's amazing. I mean, so it really
Right.
is a deep...
See, for me, I had a lot of spiritual ideas about how life worked. They were in my head.
Right.
And then when your soulmate partner dies in your arms, and even though I saw his spirit leave his body, which was the greatest gift of my life, I still didn't understand, well, why did he have to go through that? Why did he suffer that terrible physical disease for a year and a half? And then why did my girlfriend have to go through terrible suffering? And that was my question. What is the game here if we're going to suffer? What is the purpose of that? And people who go to war and different things like that, that's the question they come back with. Why are we creating this suffering and pain here? What is this about? And my response was the same as many grieving people, which is, I don't want to be here if that's what goes on here. If that's the best of what's happening, why am I here? I don't want to be here. And so my spiritual searching took me to study many different spiritual paths, Hinduism, Buddhism, everything. And I finally, after a long time, was able to figure out, it's a combination of free will and destiny when we're here. It's not either or. And that we do sign up to go through experiences. We choose them. And we choose them even if we're going through an illness. Our soul is saying, I think I want to burn up some of my negativity by experiencing some of that physical suffering. I don't need to do it that way, but if I do, I'm going to break some negative patterns I've been carrying with me for a long time. And so some souls will choose to go through that. And then they burn up all sorts of negative things they've carried, and by the time they cross over, they are completely love beings, completely cleansed of anything that's held them back. And the ones like me who are back remaining behind, we have our own lesson that we're learning in that, and we choose to go through their suffering with them to learn our own lessons. And once I was able to put all that together, it finally made sense, and I could help people then with those questions and those issues. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, it's beautiful. And how did you, and you were saying that we always called to be helpful to people, to find their service. That's how I would look at it.
Right, exactly.
So why don't you talk about that?
So every single person on planet Earth drops into this dense realm intending to do great work here. And by work, I mean work that comes from their soul, from their gifts, from their talents, from their passion. And by doing that, helping raise the consciousness of the planet. We all come in with that soul intention. And then we hit the dense realm and people say, you just have to get a job. You've got to go pay the rent. You've got to get especially if you're a man, you've got to raise a family. You have to go be a stockbroker, even if that's not our soul's mission. And so we buy into the story. And yet, when we do that, sooner or later, we hit the wake-up call and the reinvention point where everything feels bad. And whether we
have dis-ease or disharmony.
Dis-ease, disharmony, get fired, get laid off, all of these things. This is the soul.
Get sick.
Yes, and it's
Right.
the soul saying, wake up. You forgot
Stop.
everything. Stop.
Right.
What are you doing? And when we hit those reinvention points, we come up for air and go, who am I and why am I here? And those are finally the questions that start getting us in the right direction. And once we feel those questions, like we say, I've got to do what feels true to me. And I don't care if I'm not going to make a six-figure income, I'm going to do it so passionately and so truly from my soul's mission that I will make it be the way I make my living no matter what. And that's what people are waking up to do much more frequently now as we shift the vibration.
Yeah, and we were talking earlier is that we're also changing the momentum of all those ideas.
Right.
So those ideas aren't quite as strong as that, a male in this, I mean, we're coming into more of a balance. And
Right.
so why don't you talk a little bit about the balance points and things?
As everyone is aware, this has been such a dominantly left brain culture, the linear, logical thinking. And that's
reasonable.
Yes, and that's great because we built bridges and ships and buildings and created all of this wonderful material structure with that left brain logical thinking. And yet the consciousness is evolving to a point now where our right brains are required. And the right brain is the higher knowledge, the intuitive wisdom, the spirituality, also the feminine energy. And the feminine energy has been just squelched and denied to the point where in the corporate world, using the word intuition is a no-no, And it is all shifting now to where people are being allowed to incorporate intuition into their work, to incorporate spirituality into their work, to honor it as valid. And part of that is also science doing research that is validating things like intuition. Dean Radin, who wrote Entangled Minds, studying the fact that you can test intuition in the lab and prove that it is scientifically valid. And so as we merge the left brain and the right brain that way, it's bringing us into our wholeness. And that is manifesting in our work, and that's the important part.
Right, well, manifesting in every breath we take, so
Right.
it's going to affect,
Right.
Our daily activity where we do activity.
Right.
I mean, I used to talk a lot about that, a lot of the spiritual paths have service, satsang, and meditation. But if you think about it, meditation is, quiet time or, internal time. Satsang is listening or, holy company or talking about. And service is activity. So if you put all those together, that's your day.
It is. That's
So if you
your
can
job.
fill your day with all
Right.
those types of things,
Right.
have a pretty good day and a pretty
Right.
good week and a pretty good life.
Well, what I tell my clients is your day, your job has to be the same as the dialogue you're having in your head all the time about how the universe works and what is true. And if there's a different dialogue going on in your head than the way you're acting all day at work, then a shift is required. Because we can no longer shut ourselves off and just go and be zombie workers,
Right.
There's
It doesn't feel good.
It doesn't feel good, and we're waking up and becoming too conscious.
Right.
So.
I actually, a lot of times will not talk about work. I'll talk about play work.
That's
We take work seriously, and
Right.
that's something grown-ups do and playing.
Right.
But if what we're doing, if this is playing, I mean, that there was a lot of activity, a lot of effort to make this look smooth and
Right,
natural,
right.
but.
Right.
But
everyone
ultimately,
was
it's playing.
having fun.
Exactly.
Yes, yeah.
So we were talking earlier about how important, people's service and people's, so much time is spent in that activity, play, work, service, and that it's almost a momentum of reason, of mind, of fear. How do we get it into intuition and love and passion? Why don't you?
Well, we have to change the story, and we have to change what we believe in about our jobs. And, from the time that we're small, the knowledge that we're taught is, well, it's great that you have that little talent or that little interest or that dream, but you have to be realistic and practical, and you've got to go to a job, and even if you don't like that job, you still have to
You're
go.
not supposed to like it.
You're
How
not
many
supposed to like it,
Right.
right. And in fact, if you hate it, it's all right. Just get those benefits and paychecks, and then you can have fun on the weekends, right? And so we bought the story, and so many people bought into that and would go out on the weekends and try to live their life. And finally, we've raised our consciousness to a level where that is no longer acceptable. We are realizing that you can't spend 85% of your waking hours at a job that has nothing to do with who you are, with what your soul's mission is, and with what you believe to be true about how the world works. You know, I work with clients who have these enormous spiritual understandings of life and great intuition and healing powers, and they work in a retail store, and you know, and they sell dresses. And so the conversation that they have in their head about how the universe works and what is true is completely different from the words that they're speaking all day at work. And that's the shift, is we've got to line it up so that the way that the words that I say all day are exactly what I believe to be true about the universe, and in fact, those words are my work.
Yeah, that would change everything instantaneously.
Mm-hmm.
And people would just be enormously content and happy, and there'd be less war, there'd be less disease, there'd be less...
Right, because you know, so much of our pain here on this planet comes from that question all of my clients say to me is, okay, I followed all the rules, I did it right, I got the job, I got the great degree in college, and I've got what I'm supposed to be happy with, and I'm miserable. So what is the meaning here? What is the purpose? And of course, part of that is recognizing that we aren't physical beings, we're spiritual beings here on a journey. We are energy beings, pulsing waves of light, and that this chair is not real. That's part of what we have to realize. But the other thing we have to realize is that the way we spend our time earning our money has to be in alignment with that idea that we are souls on a mission. And if I'm a soul on a mission with boundless possibility and boundless potential, then why can't I be doing my true work and making money at it and loving it and being happy? Of course I can. But that's the shift of thinking that has to happen. And it's a big shift, and people like you, of course, are leading the way, saying, look, I'm creating television programming that's in alignment with what I believe to be true, and more people are waking up and watching it, and so the money is flowing to that. And as we quit believing in the mundane and shifting from left brain to right brain and really opening up to our divinity, our spirituality, our intuition, our higher consciousness, the work paradigm is shifting as well. You know, I love to watch science fiction and Star Trek, of course, and there's so many moments in Star Trek when you know, they'll say, oh yeah, back when society was economically based, you remember that? And everyone will laugh and go, oh yeah, I remember those dark ages when society was economically based. And I do believe that in our future, we'll look back on this as the dark ages, you know, when people went to a job all day that they hated, almost like the way we look back at slavery now, as, wow, what were those people thinking?
And I always used to, when I was growing up, the tie, it was like you're hanging yourself. You're
Exactly.
cutting off
You're cutting your truth
True.
off. Yes.
You're cutting your air off. I mean, it's like,
The breath of life.
How insane
Yeah.
is that this is the code that, you know, it's
Right.
like, and from early on, I just look at that, I'm
Right.
like, God. I mean, not that I never wore a tie or,
Right,
you know,
of
all
course.
the stuff, but,
Right.
you know, I mean, somewhere along the line, you look at that and go,
Yeah.
God.
And you know, the thing is, Alan, we come here on this incredible soul mission and we want to do the right thing. And when we're told by our loving parents and our teachers and everybody that, well, okay, well, if you want to do the right thing, you know, you better get an MBA or you better go to law school, and that's how you do the right thing, then most of us will go, okay, well, if that's how I get
And
loved.
you're gonna get, if you're
Right.
loved, you're gonna marry, children, mortgage,
Exactly.
house, cars, family,
Right.
pay for the daughter's wedding.
Exactly.
So you have to like almost tie yourself
Right.
to this
It's
insanity
almost
over
like
and over again.
you're told, okay, either you play this game this way,
Or you're a failure
or
and
you're
a
a
loser.
homeless person and a loser. And those are sort of the options that we're given.
There's no middle ground.
Crazy. And I'm always telling my clients, I say, you know, it's not either you do what you love and starve and be miserable and lonely, or you do what you hate and be happy and successful and wealthy. That's not the choice. The choice is, how do I bring my soul's mission to my work every day and make that an abundant source of income and joy for myself, and in so doing, raise the consciousness of the world. And you can look around you, and many people are doing that. You know, people who love their work, who may be a healer or a writer or a teacher or an artist, and they're supporting themselves financially, doing their great work. And we look at them and go, wow, if they can do that, I can do that. And so as each one of us wakes up and starts living true to who we are, making our money that way, speaking our truth, speaking our spirituality, speaking our intuition and not being ashamed of it, bringing it into our daily life, then other people look at them and go, well, I could do that.
Yeah, it's inspiring.
And so it begins affecting the domino effect everywhere, to where finally the person who's going to work hating their job becomes the minority. And so we start shifting the economic base and create robots that do the horrible jobs and give people the truth and the path to follow their mission and do their highest work as their income. And if you're meant to be a healer, you become a healer of some kind. If you're meant to be an artist, you are paid financially to do that, and you bring that work to the world to raise the consciousness. And as we're all doing that, it's a different world, and then we bridge heaven and earth. We connect the dense realm with the unseen realm, and we finally live here, remembering that we are spirits on a journey and not living here thinking and feeling we're physical bodies in a physical world trapped. And that's the metaphysical existential nightmare that people hit. If this is a physical world, if my life is nothing but that terrible job for the next 20 years,
and to have lose loved ones like we were
to
talking.
lose loved ones and watch the people I love suffer and die, what is the point? I don't want to be
right,
here.
that is not so good.
Exactly. And so people, if they don't have the courage to kill themselves when they have that negative thing, then they will drink themselves to death or get a disease, create a disease as a way to get out. And when you suddenly go, wait a minute, you are here on purpose for a good reason, to use your pain as fuel to do your incredible work, to bring your gifts to the world, to follow your dream. If you had $5 million and the universe said you could only keep it if you use that money to do your true work, what would you do? Once you're doing all of that, you realize you do want to be here, that this can
It's
be
fun.
the
It's
most joyful
right.
place you can possibly be.
Right.
And that getting to speak your truth and do your work and create abundance that way is the greatest blessing on earth.
And now we're in particularly a good time for that, because there's a lot of people who are doing it, so we can really do it in collaboration, rather than alone and necessarily get paint in the side. But here you can really do it and do a show with all these people and you coming in and the whole thing. So yeah, it's a real time for creativity and collaboration. We talk about collaboration a lot, and how when you're really in service, when you really enjoy that way, there's no need for ego, and there's plenty of room for all the abundance in the world, and there doesn't have to be only one, and mine's better than yours, and all that stuff that.
And you think about the corporate mindset, and this is, again, just a small point of our history of evolution as humans, but the corporate mindset is really based on competition, on winners and losers, on separation, on greed, all of that stuff, being told to be professional. What professional really means is shutting off your feelings, shutting off your intuition, shutting off your truth, and maybe living in your head. That's being professional, right? Well, as we begin to break that down and all of these professional people walk away or get fired or get laid off, thank you economic times, which is our greatest blessing now, is to be able to say, gee, that job I've hated for 20 years, I suddenly was fired from. As we all start walking away from that and of course grieving it, because many people grieve the loss of that security, when we finally move through that process of grieving, we go, this is my moment. This is my moment to maybe
I never could have gotten off that wheel unless it was traumatic, because I wasn't subtle enough.
So how did you get off that wheel? Were you fired or laid off, or for you and your own personal reinvention?
At some point it really became clear to me that, I was a lawyer and a financial consultant, that people came to see me out of fear and greed. Those were the two main reasons that people would actually come and write a check for me to shoot my mouth off. It was like, there must be some better way I can interact with people.
So
it was super clear to me that, I'd had enough of this, and dealing with people in that way. And then they'd see me and I'd bring up bad feelings, or they owe me money. So every time they'd see me, they'd want to cross the street, or their financial, so.
Right. So it was your own pain of saying there must be something more than this.
It just seemed clear to me that I couldn't keep doing this.
Right,
And
right.
have a successful life.
Right. And look at
And
you
I've been
now.
meditating for a
Right.
long time, but still, it was like, there's such momentum. I mean, how do we break that momentum? Actually, I was going to ask you, I mean, with your clients, or now you have students in schools,
right.
I mean, do you use any methods?
Yeah.
Yeah, why don't you talk a little bit about that?
I use
how people can experience themselves as.
And this is what I explain in my book, because I wanted everyone to be able to do this themselves. And so I wrote my book so that everyone can read it and suddenly go, aha, now I remember what I'm here to do.
So they don't need you to.
And they don't need me,
Right.
right. And so it's a process where, first of all, tapping into our intuition. In order to live here and do anything, we've got to start honoring our intuition. Our intuition is our inner guidance system. It's like our own personal GPS device that we all have, right? And yet we talk ourselves out of listening to that all day. And so my favorite way of helping people get in touch with that, if I work with a client, I say, you have to be meditating every day. Doesn't matter what your spiritual belief is, but you've got to be quieting your mind every day and sitting and listening so that that intuition can really speak up inside of you and guide you. That's number one, tapping into that intuition that we all have. Number two is recognizing that it's all on purpose. You came here on a mission. You signed up for all of this stuff you're going through, the good and the bad. And everybody's unique story and everybody's unique pain is what they signed up to go through in order to evolve their soul and to help evolve everyone around them and to create their great work and do their great work in the world. So in my story, for example, if I lost loved ones and realized in the process of their death that we are souls on a journey and that the way we spend our time here is important, and that when you're crossing over, you don't want that pain of saying, why didn't I follow my dream? Why didn't I become that musician I always wanted to be?
And worse than when you're crossing over, every day that you live.
Every day, right.
People aren't afraid of dying, they're afraid
Exactly.
of living. So,
and so if we start living with that knowledge that, yes, that dream in your heart is your mission, and also looking at your numbers from your date of birth from Pythagoras teaches that if you take your date of birth and digit it down to a single number, it gives you the energy of the work you came to do, the mission you came to accomplish. So I teach people how to line their career up with that, and that really, really helps people. We also look at their 9-year reinvention cycles, because if my client comes to me and says, oh, my husband is leaving me and I'm going bankrupt, and I go, just relax, you're at a 9-year, it's the end of a cycle, we have to get rid of the old, and then this whole new cycle comes in, and it's going to be better and more powerful than ever. And that helps them begin to understand this is not a tragedy, this is a transition, and that reinvention is always required. And so that helps them enormously. The other thing I do is I meditate on a client's path, and I teach my clients to meditate on their own paths and ask for guidance from the other realms to help them remember their mission and move forward and create their new career in alignment with that. Whenever we ask for guidance like that, there are abundant guides around us who are happy to guide us and open doors and help us move forward. And for you, for example, asking for guidance allows you to create this new studio here now and to bring in more and more backing to help you get the word to the world in a bigger way. Same for all of us. As we ask for guidance, it appears to help us open the door and move forward. The next part of it is recognizing how our own energy can either help us or stop us. We're all just energy beings, and we vibrate on this continuum, and when we're in our positive self, it's a very high frequency. Nothing can stop us, and that is our love, our gratitude, our joy. But of course, we can't live in that all the time. Part of the human experience is we're going to feel the negative stuff as well, and the fear and the anger and the pain. The only danger with that is that can stop people, and it can make them sort of get lost in their pain and give up. And to shift that energy, I teach my clients, of course you're going to feel fear, but let's play with ways to shift out of that. Like, for example, play the $5 million game, see that vision of your true life, and start trying to move forward in that direction. I also teach little tricks for shifting our energy, like feeling gratitude or sweetness, things that raise our vibration. And then
And that's all in the book.
it's all in the book. And that way, we don't get stuck in our fear and paralyzed. And really the only thing we can ever, there's nothing we can ever do wrong here, but we can waste time by kind of wallowing in our pain and giving up for a while. But sooner or later, we all start asking the questions again and saying, I want to do something. I want to make my life meaningful. And the minute we start saying that, we definitely get guided and we get help and we are allowed to see the next step. And the other thing is to see just the baby steps. You know, people get overwhelmed. It's like wanting to climb Everest, like, gee, I want to start my own business and I need to make a 6-figure income. And I go, no.
One step at a time.
One step at a time. Let's see, can you agree to go to your local chamber of commerce and learn how to write a business plan? You know, number one. Can you go and talk with some other entrepreneurs who are successful and ask them how they got started? Number two. You know, can you, and if they agree to 3 or 4 baby steps, then that's great.
Yeah, they're building up momentum.
That's the great.
Right.
They begin to build a momentum. But people, we all tend to get overwhelmed by the enormous task that we think we want to accomplish. We put it in our head that way, right? And so we got to act like, you know, we're just going to break it down. Nope, this week all I have to do is research a few websites. That's it. And then next week maybe I'll talk to so-and-so. And then slowly it starts manifesting.
Well, there it is, and it starts manifesting. So amazingly, we're coming to the end of the show. So if you want any information about Sue, her book, the art project, you know, anything to do with bridging love, call us 805-687-2053, 805-687-2053. Good night, we love you. Thank you.